Hello, welcome back to my channel and my Michael Powell retrospective. And today I'm talking about an absolute little gem. I Know Where I'm Going. This is Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger taking a little holiday from the war and propaganda, from blackouts and blitzes, and going off to their happy place, Michael Powell's happy place, the Scottish Islands, where he made The Edge of the World his first independent feature. It's often said that Michael Powell is a very English director. I think there's a case for saying he's a very Scottish director. Look at how he contrasts Scottish life in this film, the nature, the affection for other people in the community, with the sort of capitalist getting on type of life in London, the busy world of the city. And this is what happens to this young lady in the film. She's got her life all sorted out. There's this wonderful opening sequence, brilliant, one of Powell's great opening credit sequences, looking at the life of this young girl who always knows where she's going. She always knows where she wants to crawl to as a baby. She always knows what she wants as a child. And as a young woman, she always knows what she wants both from work and from men. She chooses to marry the boss of this chemicals company. He lives on this Scottish island that he doesn't really understand, but he lives there anyway. And she's going up north to join him and get married. But on the way, she meets someone else and she encounters a life that she's never encountered before, and it starts to change her. This is what's really interesting about this movie. It's a love story, and it's a very sweet and romantic one. But it's also a very interesting and unusual one, because it's a love story where its two main protagonists are running away from love. They're trying to stop falling in love. The man is a laird, and this laird is under a curse that if he goes into this castle, he'll be chained to a woman for the rest of his life. So he's avoiding going in this castle, he's avoiding getting married, right? And she is a young woman who thinks she knows what she wants in life. She wants to be rich, she wants to have social status, it's all sorted. But then she comes into contact with nature, with community, with a world where money is not important, where community is more important and love is more important, and folklore and superstition and ways of life that have been there for generations. And it starts to change her, it starts to infect her. And the whole movie, she's trying to run away from it. Usually in romances and romantic comedies, people are trying to find love. They're trying to run towards love. These two are trying to run away from it. And that's what strangely links this film to the two films before it and a lot of Michael Powell's work. It's interesting in Michael Powell's films how there's a theme of people being changed or people trying to influence them to see differently. Think of Colonel Blimp, where the various characters are trying to get Blimp out of his starchy, old-fashioned way of looking at war, to try to realise what this new war with the Nazis means. Similarly, in Canterbury Tale, a character is desperately trying to use all sorts of means to make people realise the importance of the continuity of history and how they belong in that history and what they're fighting for. Similarly, in this film, the Wendy Hiller character is being changed by her landscape and environment and the people she meets, being made into a better, fuller, more mature person, being changed from this very set idea of the world she has. This is a common theme in Michael Powell's films. Of course, it's also a romantic film in Britain, a very English pairing of Roger Livesey and Wendy Hiller. You couldn't get two more English people than that. They're not sort of beautiful young things or sexy young things. They're very starchy and English. Wendy Hiller is more famous later on in life when she became a dame and she played very starchy, very dominating figures. And so here she's the love interest. It's quite an unusual love interest. And Roger Livesey is quite an unusual love interest. But I love Roger Livesey. And you can't help thinking of another odd British pairing, which is Brief Encounter, which was made a couple of years later. And again, that's a very British film about, two unlikely lovers meeting in a train station and trying to pursue a love affair. What I found interesting watching this again this weekend is, compared to that film, you would have thought that Brief Encounter is the more adult film, right? It's about an unrequited love. It's about a sort of tortured tragedy of these two ordinary people. Actually, this film feels more adult to me now. I love Brief Encounter, but this feels more fresh on its feet. It's sort of wit and the way it positions the two people to each other feels more adult, more mature somehow. You could argue, yes, they're in this kind of never land of this Scottish island. whereas Brief Encounter is set in the nitty-gritty real world of post-war Britain. But somehow I find this film more moving and more fresh than Brief Encounter these days. And after all, at the end, they do get it together. Wonderful final scene where he finally goes into the castle, he reads the curse, and then he looks down from the battlements and he sees her coming towards him with a phalanx of 3 pipers, and she's marching behind them. It's a wonderful, wonderful, very moving end shot. This is a gorgeous film if you've never encountered it. Please do watch it. You will love it. There's a romantic in all of us, don't deny it, and you'll be moved by it. There's one last thing I want to say about this film, and that is it has one of the great entrances in cinema. You remember last time I spoke about Canterbury Tale and the wonderful way they introduced the figure of Culpeper with this shot going up these stairs, and then he's framed by this bar across, and he's in this room of judgment. Well, there's a similar framing that happens in this film. There's a character called Katrina, spelt Catriona, played by Pamela Brown. I almost forgot there, who was later on Michael Powell's partner. Pamela Brown has one of the most extraordinary faces in cinema. Her eyes are incredible. They almost look like they're lit up from behind. And they have an attitude of slight mockery, but also piercing, looking for the truth. Extraordinary face that she has. And she enters the film. The way that she enters the film is extraordinary. So Wendy Hiller has gone up to this house. She hasn't been able to get on the ferry across the island, so she has to stay in this house. And this house is this wonderful old rickety house where chickens and hens are running through the empty corridors. She finds the Laird Roger Livesey and his English pal who's obsessed with falcons and eagles. And then suddenly they hear some dogs outside. Cut to this incredible shot of this woman and these 2 great big hounds. I think they're Afghan hounds. And it's like a scene of Herne the Hunter, a kind of female, Artemis coming out of the woods. And then the next shot, the camera is low, looking up some stairs. Pamela Brown appears at the top of the steps. These 2 great big hounds run down towards us, and she comes into the room, very quick. But it's one of the great entrances of any female actor in movies. Here she is, this kind of halfway between an earth goddess and a kind of pixie in her kilt, wafting her wet hair away from her face. It's a great, great scene. And just one little thought before I leave this video. The person who laid the curse in the castle, I didn't notice this until this time round. I've seen this film many times, but it didn't click. But the person who lays the curse is called Katrina. An interesting little detail. I'll see you next time for A Matter of Life and Death.